Hello everyone, I'm going to do two quick book reviews on here today. And these two books are again books I got as advanced reader copies from NetGalley. So thank you very much to NetGalley for providing me these books. They were both audiobooks, and NetGalley is a service that will give you advanced readers copies of books, ebooks or audiobooks in exchange for honest reviews. So they do ask for honest reviews. It's not like I'm being paid or given this book in exchange for like a hype or anything like that. Obviously it is to get the word out, but I am going to be totally honest in my review. Now the two books that I am going to review in this video were Containing Big Tech by Tom Kemp and The Family Guest by Nelle Lamarr. Containing Big Tech was a non-fiction and The Family Guest was a fiction. And I'm going to read the blurb out for each, and I'm going to talk about each one individually. So I'm going to start by talking about Containing Big Tech, and while I wait for the blurb to load on my computer, I just want to talk about it first. So as you might be aware, depending on how much of my videos you watch, I've really been trying to delve into non-fiction this year. I used to be very adamant. I was always an avid reader, but I was always very adamant that I did not like non-fiction. And at the start of this year, I read one non-fiction book that I loved, and then from there, I've just tried to find different ones. And I am at some point going to try and do a non-fiction book ranking of the books I read in 2023. So I'll probably talk about this book a bit more there. This book was a non-fiction about technology and privacy and how they collect our data and use it and all that jazz. And I am very security, safe, privacy, all that. Because that's luckily something my parents have always sort of instilled in us. Even before the internet was as big as it is now, from the age of very, very young children, they would tell us about the importance of being secure online. But obviously, the world and the internet has just expanded and it's kind of crazy. And I don't really know stuff about data, and I don't really understand how, or I didn't understand how them knowing stuff about me, and by them I just mean the big tech companies, how that's going to make a difference in my life. I don't have anything to hide. How is information about me going to change anything? But despite that, I do always click decline on cookies, and I go through the effort. If it makes me click more buttons, I will decline everything. Most of my online profiles, like my private profiles, are private, as in, that makes sense, I hope. So I didn't necessarily feel like I needed this book. But I did think it was interesting to see how it works, the thoughts behind it, and what they do with our data. And I think it's a very important read. So therefore I would definitely recommend it. I think I maybe didn't get quite as much out of it as people who maybe aren't as sort of cyber safe, but that's even more of a reason for other people to read it. And at the moment, I feel like the two types of non-fiction books I've read this year, some have been exactly how I like it, more like a novel where you don't feel like you're reading a non-fiction, and then a few have been in a way I don't really like it, which is just like feeling like an essay. And it just feels like it's 300 pages of an extended essay that I cannot be bothered with. This one definitely lent more towards the essay category, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad or as dry as those other ones. With a lot of those ones in that category, I just feel like I finished reading the books and barely retained any information. Whereas with this one, I feel like it was a lot more clear. And it was still, set up a bit like an essay where each chapter had sort of an introduction about what it was going to be talking about and a conclusion about what it talked about. So it did feel a little bit like a university, book or a textbook. But I still thought the subject matter was more interesting and it was more relatable maybe. I don't know, it just felt easier to read than a lot of those other books. So that is a win from me. I think I gave it 3.75 stars on Storygraph. I can't remember off the top of my head now. And my Wi-Fi isn't strong enough at the moment to find out. But let me read you the blurb. Also, for the record, it was read by Dave Clark. And that was good as well. I don't have any faults in that. The path forward to rein in online surveillance, AI, and tech monopolies. Technology is a gift and a curse. The 5 big tech companies, Meta, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, have built innovative products that improve many aspects of our lives. But their intrusiveness and our dependence on them have created pressing threats to our civil rights, economy, and democracy. Coming from an extensive background building Silicon Valley-based tech startups, Tom Kemp eloquently and precisely weaves together the threats posed by big tech, the overcollection and weaponization of our most sensitive data, the problematic ways big tech uses AI to process and act upon our data, and the stifling of competition and entrepreneurship due to big tech's dominant market position. This richly detailed book exposes the consequences of big tech's digital surveillance, exploitative use of AI, and monopolistic and anti-competitive practices. It offers actionable solutions to these problems and a clear path forward for individuals and policymakers to advocate for change. By containing the excesses of big tech, we will ensure our civil rights are respected and preserved, our economy is competitive, and our democracy is protected. So reading that has actually reminded me of one other thing I wanted to mention about this book, which I really, really liked. It did actually tell you at the end of every chapter what you can do about the things that we're seeing or reading about. So it did actually give you actionable solutions, which I was very appreciative of. Again, a lot of it I didn't really need because I have sort of been taught all these things already, but for a lot of people it will be very important. So, big fan of that book. Moving on to a totally different genre, totally different book, The Family Guest by Nelle Lamarr. Now this one was narrated by Cecily Bednar-Schmidt and Lynn Norris, and I'm going to read the blurb for you first and then I will talk about it. I've never met her before, but I know who she is, because our new guest is the spitting image of the daughter I lost. Long blonde hair, sparkling dark eyes, perfect pearly white teeth, and that's exactly why I invited her into our home. From the moment our exchange student Tanya arrives, I feel like my daughter has come back to life. With her brown eyes and slender frame, she looks so much like Annabelle that sometimes I can almost pretend she didn't die in that tragic accident. Tanya really is the perfect guest. Kind, polite, and always happy to help me in the kitchen. At last, a member of the family who compliments my beautiful house and enjoys my homemade dinners. And when she asks questions about my life, I feel I finally found someone I can confide in. My younger teenage daughter, Paige, isn't so happy about our guest. She thinks it's strange that Tanya looks like Annabelle, and she hates it when she wears her sister's old clothes. And now she's convinced herself that Tanya isn't who she says she is. But I learned a long time ago that it's best not to ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. And while I'm growing suspicious that our new guest has a secret, I'm certain that it's nothing in comparison to mine. I had thoughts. So obviously when I first read that blurb, I was hooked. I was like, this is a book for me. I love mystery, I love thriller, I like all that jazz. Death, mystery, brilliant. It wasn't a bad book. It wasn't. In fact, I would almost say it was a good one. But it didn't live up to its expectations, and that was very disappointing. I loved the mystery that stayed throughout the book. It did keep making you want to find out more and keep turning the pages. But then there were some bits that were way too obvious to me, and some of the character developments I thought were just not, it didn't make sense. Like, I'm going to try not to spoil it, but I am going to talk about one specific bit. Actually, not specific, a bit more general, but basically there is a moment where the mother does start to question Tanya, but then Tanya says something and she fully believes her. And I just think, if you're suspicious of someone, you're not going to just outright believe what they say. And there were various moments throughout the book like that where I just thought it doesn't add up. And I think I might have spoken about this on the channel before. I find it really hard when there's miscommunication or when parents don't listen to their children and children don't listen to their parents, and because I'm very lucky and I never experienced that. I've always sort of had full, complete support from my parents and from just about anyone I talk to. There's never that, what's it called, like dramatic irony kind of thing. I don't know exactly. But when I read about it, I just think this doesn't happen. And maybe it does. And maybe, as I say, maybe I've just been very lucky not to experience it. But it was just really frustrating. And then I also didn't love the accents, and I know that it was a choice, and I know that it made sense, and it was warranted, but it still annoyed me, both of the characters. And I didn't enjoy reading about any of the characters, really. I liked the relationship between Paige and her younger brother, but that was maybe the only thing I liked. And between Paige and her grandma. But just about every other, like, character and relationship and all that just annoyed me and frustrated me, and I just wanted it to stop. What I really did like about the book, though, is that it's from different perspectives. I enjoy that. And there were things to enjoy about the book. It was definitely not a bad book, but it was very average. I actually think I gave it 3 stars off the top of my head. I could be mistaken. Although looking at this now, the average rating is 4 stars. So maybe I don't know. And also I don't know, but I think it's a young adult fiction, and I think it should be anyway. If it's not, then I don't know how well it's gonna do. Because I think as a teenager, I probably would have loved this. Or at least enjoyed. But actually, maybe that's not true, I don't know. But reading it now, it was just very, very frustrating. But I did enjoy it, and I did read it in like a day or maybe 2. So it obviously was good enough. But yeah, those are my messy thoughts about that one. I hope you enjoyed hearing about those 2 completely different books. If you like books, stick around on this channel because I do have lots and lots of videos about books. I love books. And as I say, I'm going to try and do a non-fiction ranking at some point of my non-fiction books. And I'm probably going to do a Storygraph wrap-up at the end of the year as well. You're watching this at the end of the year. I'm filming this in October. But yeah, if you think you might like my stuff, stick around. And if you've read these books, let me know your thoughts on them. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later. Bye!